because if we're down to the last, bit of money we have left and your project is on the cusp of being funded or not, and we have $50,000 left and you need $100,000 and it's not scalable, we have to, have an all or nothing approach on that project, and we just have to say no because we just don't have enough funding left. But if you said, hey, we can go down to 50,000, we're like, okay, we have 50,000, you can do 50,000, we'll give you what we have towards this project, so at least you can get something done. So really consider that scalability aspect of your project and whether or not it can be. If you say it can be, it doesn't mean it will be. This is really just something we have in our back pocket for if we are facing some of those tough choices when we get down to it. Another question that's new to the application is, are other projects impacted if the project is not funded? So this is another question we'll ask for each project type. And what we're asking is, if we don't fund this project, is there anything we need to know about the other projects in the application that might be impacted by that? So again, on the topic of tablets and software, right? If we don't award you software, well, then you probably don't have any use for tablets, right? So that would be, through this question is where you would make those connections for ODOT, just so we don't miss anything and make a funding choice that really doesn't help you at the end of the day. So if under your software project, if we say, are other projects impacted if this project is not funded, you would say yes. We would ask you to indicate which projects, and you would say, we can't use the tablets if we don't have the software. And that just really kind of reinforces the need and the connection between the two projects, and makes sure that we're not giving you funding that you can't use at the end of the day. For some projects, we will ask about partnerships and community impact. So this is where you can outline if there's more than one organization locally that has a role in the implementation of the project, or maybe is impacted by the project. And then you also can speak to what will happen if this project isn't funded, the impact locally. So, a lot of information in our application is, quantitative data, hard numbers, but we want to provide that opportunity for you to provide some qualitative narrative on why this project is important, and really be able to give you the opportunity to make the case about your local area and why this project is so important, so that can be considered in our final determinations. We are going to ask about project planning. So again, this really speaks to the coordinated plan for the most part, for 5310 funding, for example, which I think a lot of you are accustomed to. We need to make sure that that project's in a coordinated plan to remain eligible for that program. If it's not, again, it doesn't mean that you can't be funded. It just starts to reduce the total number of programs that you've been deemed eligible for. We ask about project milestones and outcomes when applicable. So again, this is questions related to how will you determine that this project is successful locally. And think about like a pilot project, for example. If you're seeking pilot project funding, then pilot projects in theory are conceptual. We're going to ask you, how do you know this pilot project was successful? How do you know that you want to permanently implement this? And so you may be asked questions about that. And then I have another section on vehicle project information, because vehicles are kind of a monster of their own in terms of the amount of information we request. Because in addition to all of the project information I just covered, there's additional project information above and beyond that, with the type of service the vehicle will be used in, the estimated miles, trips, service hours, the vehicle type. If you are requesting a replacement vehicle, you're going to be expected to have all the information for the vehicle that's being replaced in your fleet. So there is quite a bit more involved with vehicle project requests. So that is a lot of information, and there are a lot of project types. And so we've put together this table that gives you kind of a high-level view of what information is going to ultimately apply to each project type. The goal of this table is to help you start to prepare ahead of the application. So once this presentation is distributed to you, you can come to these slides and you can say, okay, I'm applying for replacement vehicles and computer hardware. They're going to ask me for the goals. They're going to ask me for population served, priority description, the funding amounts, my local match sources. You can start to see the types of information that we're going to request of you for each project type, and you can start to kind of check off that you have that prepared, that is something you can access, and you can start to try to get some of that information together, so that way once the application is published, you kind of feel confident that you have what you need to fill in the information once you're in there. And you know, this is a high level representation of the information we're requesting. It probably represents 98% of the fields in each project section, but there will be some, you know, other questions that are in there that might not be covered here. But you know, this is in general what you can expect. So hopefully by providing this to you, it gives you kind of a jumping off point and how to begin to wrap your mind around how to complete the application. So because slides are kind of small and there is so many projects, there's just a couple of slides. It's the same information down the left, which is the project information, and then across the top in the header is just the different project types. So once you access this presentation and you come here, you know, some of your projects might be in this table, some might be in this table, but it's all the same information. So on the topic of coordinated planning, so each project will ask you if it is included in a coordinated plan. If you indicate that it is included in a coordinated plan, you will then be asked to indicate if it is local, regional, or both. So some counties, we have implemented regional plans, and it's mainly across the center of the state from east to west. That's where the regions have implemented regional plans, and we want to start incorporating those goals into our project selection process. So we want to make sure to call that out to you now, so you know, okay, if I have a regional plan and I'm not quite sure where I fit in, go ahead and reach out to your regional coordinating agency or lead agency and start having those conversations now. I'm sure they'll be happy to help you be successful in getting those projects into your area so that you can start to address some of those goals and strategies. But you know, if you don't include your regional plan, then it could impact your scoring. And so then you will be requested to include specific information for the project. So I had mentioned earlier that instead of answering these questions in each project section, there's actually a planning section for the application. The reason for this is, you know, if it's better to just have to reference the coordinated plan one time, right? So if you're requesting vehicles and mobility management and operating, as you're going through your project sections, you will be asked, is this included in a coordinated plan? If you select yes, in the planning section, the appropriate questions will pop up. And we will say, for your operating project, please indicate what or what unmet needs is your operating project addressing, essentially. What unmet needs are your vehicle project addressing? And that way, since it's all in the planning section, you can just get your coordinated plan out and look it all up at once instead of doing it at, you know, referencing the plan, going back, referencing the plan, going back. We're trying to make it as efficient as possible for you. So all of this information will be in that planning section, like I mentioned earlier. But again, if you're not familiar with your coordinated plan, please reach out to the lead agency, have a conversation with them, let them know what you're applying for, work with them to understand how you should answer some of these questions. So finally, we have the attachment section. So like I mentioned earlier, because you can't save attachments through the save and resume feature, we have put them at the very end for easy access for you right before submission. And then the attachments will appear by project type. So if you have vehicle projects, all of the necessary attachments for vehicles will be all together. So hopefully that will make it easier for you to quickly find attachments and upload them. I do want to highlight the authorizing resolution because there will be a change to it for this program year. In the past, you were instructed to specifically call out the programs that you will be applying for, but since you do not know which programs will ultimately fund your projects, through the authorizing resolution process, you should be generic and just have a statement that basically covers all of our funding programs. So some people have their own authorizing resolution format that they use, and that's totally fine. So just make sure that that references all ODOT programs. But we also have a sample resolution that we will have in our related documents section, and that will be where you can access this copy that has this language already inserted. Okay, so I do want to take some time to go through some best practices. I mean, this is a workshop after all, so we want to kind of go back and forth on some ways that you can maximize the effectiveness of your application. So I know not everyone on this webinar today may be pursuing operating capitalized maintenance or mobility management projects, but this is a huge issue for us year in and year out. So I really do want to highlight this. When it comes to these three project types, we do request budget narratives. Budget narratives are incredibly important. This is where ODOT ultimately determines eligibility and allowability of cost. As many of you know who have participated in these projects in the past, we do not require you to submit receipts and documentation with every invoice request. We rely on the fact that we approve your budget before costs are incurred, and then we review your budget through the technical assistance review. However, if your application budget narrative is not thorough, we cannot in good conscience say we're confident that the costs being submitted through your invoices are eligible. So that's why it is so important that the budget narratives are done in a way that allows ODOT to determine eligibility and allowability. So I want to give some examples of some narratives we've seen in the past that have missed the mark and some narratives that really are addressing what we're looking for.